And now, Pickle.
Get in, losers.
We are going to summer camp. It's summer camp, our preview series where we take a look at the 12 FBS teams in the state of Texas, and hoot, it's the Rice Owls, because we're going from west to east, okay? We've done 10. We're now in Houston, and Rice is on the west side of Houston. So next week, we'll close it all out with the Houston Cougars.
Because this is the longitude and latitude podcast.
This is
Except Tepper doesn't know which is which.
Yes, but latitude is one of them. Anyway, let's get into the Rice Owls. Hoot. Let's talk about the state of the program. I think
they're on a heater.
Look, they're the hottest team in college football in the state of Texas. Okay? They are a team that won their last 3 games. They started off 0-9 and finished 3-9.
Yep.
They won at Middle Tennessee, they beat North Texas, and they beat UTEP on the road. All 3 of those, by the way, I mean, look, UTEP was bad. They were real bad, right? But it was on the road. That's not nothing. North Texas, it's a good win. And Middle Tennessee, it was a good win on the road. In Murfreesboro. I remember.
There we go, yeah. The Lightning.
So, they're the hottest team in college football in the state of Texas. And look, I think right now, if you recognize that what Mike Bloomgren, our buddy, Bloom, what he inherited there at Rice was a real tough scene. It's a real tough scene. I think that if you're a Rice fan who is looking at the big picture, you're like, you know what? Last year didn't start great, but they got better as the season went on, and this is probably about where they should be. Yeah, you would love them to be going 5, 6, 7 wins. It's not to say that that they're satisfied with what they've got, but I think if you're Rice, you feel like, okay, the Mike Bloomgren train is on the tracks, but they got to keep chugging forward. I think that this is an important third year.
You've got to look for steps and not leaps. You can't reasonably
look. Rice was never going to go from 1-11 to 11-1.
No,
it just wasn't going to happen. But last year felt like a decent step forward. They went 2-11 in 2018. They went 3-9 last year. That's a step forward. And I know, like, it's just weird to compare programs across the state of Texas that, like, look, if Texas went from 2-11 to 3-9, that people would be like, fire the coach. At Rice, that feels like it's a good step. And it feels like now can they build on that. So I think the state of the program is promising. I think the state of the program is in a place where they feel like they should be. So a lot to like about that. Let's start with our offensive breakdown. Let's go to the offense. And look, they need a quarterback.
Yeah.
A lot of it comes down to quarterbacks. In spring practice, in late February, they had 7 quarterbacks.
Which is
they narrowed it down to 3.
Unbelievable.
They think it's basically Giovanni Johnson, Mike Collins, and Wiley Green. They think it's probably going to be Mike Collins. Mike Collins, a TCU grad transfer. They think it's going to be Mike Collins. A lot of guys, not necessarily a locked and loaded option. Okay, there's that. The running back spot, I'm actually pretty bullish on. I like the running back spot. Juma Odobiano, I've said on this program before, I'm a big fan of. What are you giggling at?
Nothing.
Sorry.
I received a text message. Sorry.
Got it.
Continue.
Juma Odobiano, I'm a big fan of. I want to see him get more carries. I want to see him stay healthy. That's the biggest thing. I think he's going to be a key part. I like the running back. The offensive line,
yeah,
tough. They're bringing in some grad transfers that they feel like can fill in some holes. But look, a lot of this comes down to whether or not Mike Bloomgren, who is fundamentally an offensive line guy, can he get that offensive line moving in the right direction? If he can, then suddenly maybe they can outperform what kind of the tea leaves say? Because right now the tea leaves say they don't have a ton of experience. They weren't very good last year. Why would they be good this year?
Well, and that's the thing. When you have that many quarterbacks that you're trying to nail down a guaranteed starter, you have to have an offensive line that can at least give the guys a couple plays here and there to show what they're working with until they can pin someone down.
Well, here is the best part of the offense. The best part of the offense is that if they can find a quarterback, he's got a good core to throw to. Okay? Austin Trammell, I think, is a star. Jordan Myers is super promising at the tight end spot. Bradley Rosner, the Needville kid, at the other wide receiver spot. There is a lot to like about the receiving core. Can they find a quarterback, and can they get an offensive line to help support that quarterback? That's a huge question, but that's the strength of arguably the entire team is the receiver core. I think the receiver core is really, really solid. Let's go to the defense. Look, I thought the defense actually, when you're talking about what got better last year, I think the defense took a step forward. There was improvement. As the season wore on, they got better and better. And if you're just looking at numbers, they bring back a good amount from last year. I think the strength of this team is in the linebacker core. It's in the middle. Blaze Aldridge and Antonio Montero. I really like this. I really like this linebacker core. You're adding Trayshawn Chamberlain, the kid from South Carolina. I like this linebacker core. I would say that the next thing that I like would probably be the secondary. The secondary is pretty good. The secondary brings back almost all of its starters.
Right.
George Niakwal is probably the star here at the safety spot, free safety spot. And there's some. They have recruited well in the secondary, so there's some good depth there.
And they were really good at forcing turnovers last year too. It was just the fact that the offense couldn't do anything with them. But I think that people would say, "Oh, it's Rice. We can kind of ease up," and then bam, those DBs were right there to pick you off.
DBs, a lot. The defensive backs were really solid last year, and I think that they could be again this year. Then there's the front, and the front I'm wary of. I am a little bit worried. There's guys I like. I like Elijah Garcia at the tackle spot. I like Trey Schumann off one of the edges. Kenneth Orji is a guy out of Fort Bend that I think is a good rush end. But the depth here is a real question mark. The depth here is a real question mark, and if you are going to rotate guys through, first line, fine. Second line, almost complete unknown. And that's going to be a question, is can they develop that kind of quality depth? My breakout player. My breakout player, I think, is going to be... I mean, I could go with Juma Otoviano because he missed almost all of last year, but that's kind of cheating. I'm going to go with Gabe Taylor. Gabe Taylor is a really interesting case. He signed in February. He is actually the brother of the late Sean Taylor. He played football for the first time since 8th grade last year, and he picked off 5 passes and returned them he picked off 10 passes, returned 5 of them for touchdowns. He's obviously got like a super high ceiling, and if they can put him in a good spot, I think he's got a chance to really make some noise. So I would say Gabe Taylor is the guy that I'm keeping an eye on. Let's talk worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is that it turns out that last year, that late season win streak was like a dead cat bounce, right?
Right.
That it turns out that no, it's just you were playing teams that you snuck up on Middle Tennessee, North Texas was in a bad way, and you beat a bad UTEP team. And it turns out that it was nothing, and you see a step back in the building process. Like the offensive line doesn't come together, the defensive line gets exposed because they don't have a ton of depth. They don't figure out the quarterback spot. That's a big one. They waste a wide receiver core that I think is really talented. Maybe they struggle with injuries again. Juma Otoviano gets hurt again. Something like that. It's easy to see that, and it's easy to see them slip back to now, look, we don't know. Again, caveat, we don't know the schedule, blah, 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 all that fun stuff. They're supposed to play Lamar. Lamar says that they're still playing. We'll see. We'll talk to Sean J. Rod here in a moment. But that is that's something that, to me, it's easy to see. Of like, oh, you know what? It turns out last year that was a fluke. You know what I mean? That actually, it's not a sign that the program's moving forward. In fact, it was just, you got lucky. I don't think that's the case, but it's easy to see that would be the case. I don't think that's the case, though. Let's talk about best case scenario. The best case scenario is that you find a quarterback, the offensive line gels, and the offense goes from like meh to like pretty good, and the defense is as good or better as it was last year, and suddenly you're talking about a team that is in serious contention for a bowl. And at that point, you want to talk about buzz around that program. That would be really, really exciting if they could do that. Now, look, again, all of this comes down to we don't know what the schedule is. I know. I have Twitter. But I do think that if things break right, Rice could be challenging for a bowl game, and that would not be nothing. That would be something that I think is a sincere step in the right direction for this Rice program. So, look, I like this team. I like this program. I like where they're heading. I know you guys know that I'm a Mike Bloomgren stan. I maintain that. I think that this program's heading in the right direction, and I'd like to see them take the next step. If they take that next step, then it's like it's full steam ahead, and things are going to start kind of turning. They're going to go from in a conference and in a division, especially that is there for the taking. They can immediately jump back up and be one of the in that upper echelon of the CUSA West. So there's Rice. That's summer camp. We're going to close down summer camp next week with the Houston Cougars on the east side of Houston. Mm-hmm. But for now, please make sure you take down your tents when you're not tenting them.
We just turned tenting into a verb?
That's a verb.
Okay.
Don't tent. Or do tent.
Do tent.
Tent responsibly.
But not while you're tenting them.
Please tent responsibly.